Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
My name is John Samuel Pickwick. I'll be 27 next spring. Only my grandmother and wife call me Johnny. My father, Robert, did this too when he was alive. I don't know why I'm John, but Samuel was my grandfather's name. My parents were born on the same day. By a strange coincidence, they died on the same day, 22 years apart. My mother, Evelyn, was 22 when she died. Since I was only a few months old at the time, I don't remember anything about her. Nobody ever talked about her. My father died on a deserted stretch of highway. His car went off the road and crashed into a tree. He was under the influence of alcohol but not drunk. They think he may have fallen asleep as there were no skid marks. They were never able to determine exactly why he was on this highway. My dad and grandparents raised me with my grandmother until I was 8. When Dad finally saved enough money, he bought his own house, and that's where I still live. The house is in a typical country setting, one of those developments where every third house is the same. My dad died 4 years ago while I was in college. He had a restless soul. Dad wasn't one to say, "I love you," but he always tracked me down and gave me a big hug when he came home from work. I don't remember a single day when he didn't smell of whiskey. However, we didn't have a single bottle of alcohol in our house, even though he spent a lot of time in his favorite pub. I really don't think he had a problem with alcohol. Photos of him still hang on the walls of the pub from all the years he was a darts champion. Dad drove a truck and knew almost everyone in town. When he was sick, his neighbors came to him with soup and elixirs. Dad didn't believe in painkillers, so witch's brew, as he called them, were the only remedy he took for his ailments. I'm not so lucky. If I got sick or in pain, he would take me to the doctor to get an injection in my butt. I've learned not to complain. Dad loved playing rugby, and so did I. No matter how rough rugby was, if I complained about an injury, he would tease me, "Let me know what size dress I need to buy you, Joan." I never remember us having a party. Dad was a loner and had a very small circle of friends. It was unusual for him to date the same woman for the second time. Attempts to arrange a date with him proved fruitless. When Dad died, Grandma paid for a beautiful headstone, Robert Pickwick, Evelyn Pickwick, the loving parents of John Samuel Pickwick. I had never been to my mother's grave until my father was buried. I have a civil engineering degree. I work in the city on road improvement projects. I didn't really set out to work on the roads, but was inspired by a few presentations when I was a sophomore in college. I interned in the city between my junior and senior years. The timing was perfect as one of the old-timers was retiring around the time I graduated from high school. I married my high school sweetheart, Marianne, and we have a 4-month-old son whom we named Robert Samuel. Marianne and I kept pace all through high school. I ruined everything when I slept with a girl who allowed it to everyone. You know how high school kids are afraid of dying as virgins. There were a lot of tears. Since I was going to college and Marianne was not, we just broke up. We said hi when we bumped into each other during the holidays. After graduating from high school, I moved home, and about a week later, I found Marianne on my porch. I would still like to see if we have any magic left. We began a slow process of reconciliation. I found out that Marianne has her own house in the city. Her father accepted a job several hours away, and her parents moved shortly after Marianne graduated from high school. Marianne worked as an accountant at a clothing store downtown. After a few dates, it became very clear that we definitely had good chemistry. She wasn't a virgin, and I ended up on the floor more than once in college. We never talked about details. That was in the past. Our courtship lasted less than 6 months before I proposed to her. We waited a few years before we decided to have a child. Marianne worked until 10 days before giving birth. I'm your typical 6 feet 200 inches lb out of shape guy. Marianne is petite, about 5 feet even and barely 100 pounds. Her breasts looked like little pancakes with raisins on top. Marianne is athletic and being so light, gyrates as she rides me like a cowgirl. She's a tigress in the bedroom and refuses me nothing. It's not about what you have but how you use it. One of her favorite role plays is when I sneak up on her in the kitchen and pin her to the table. I mask my voice with a low growl as I caress her. I can't call it a rape fantasy, it's more like a rag doll, a submissive slave. In such games, she more than once reached the peak of pleasure. This little treat was put on hold when Marianne became pregnant. As her due date approached, she began to look like a water balloon with legs. She hated her appearance and couldn't understand how I could love her when she was so bloated. There was nothing I could say to calm her fears as she was tormented by hormones. My engineering degree did not prepare me for how to calm her fragile mind. Robert Samuel wrapped his small fingers around me. I'll do anything for him. Marianne enjoys being a mother, and we have already planned for a new addition to the family as soon as Robert's first birthday arrives. I make enough from my job to easily afford our lifestyle. Marianne is very self-conscious about her figure. She would like to have bigger breasts. Since she is breastfeeding, they are too big right now. There's a guy next door who seems to hang around our house. Charlie just graduated from high school and does hard work when he can find it. He always asks if we have any tasks he can do. I find him a little creepy. He's a very big guy. About a week before Christmas, our marriage suffered greatly. When I returned home, I found Marianne sitting on the sofa and crying. I'm really sorry, Johnny. I didn't want this to happen. I'm so sorry, Johnny, Marianne said, sobbing. What are you sorry about? Tell me what happened, I asked. Sobbing, she explained, I was unloading groceries and one of the bags tore. Charlie was nearby and started helping me pack my things even though I told him that I could finish it myself. He took several bags to the kitchen. When I turned my back to him, he pinned me against the counter. He did the same thing you do when we play this game. I think he was spying on us. I was just locked. I was scared and confused, but I couldn't speak. Was it rape? Did you enjoy it too? Sorry, I didn't say anything. No, I didn't enjoy it. Everything happened so quickly, I was scared. You didn't answer me. Was it rape? Marianne didn't answer. She shook her head. This is just wonderful. Anytime you get scared, will you just let strangers, you, Johnny? No, it wasn't like that at all. I didn't know what to do. I just froze. How about screaming, kicking, and clawing? Johnny, it was a mistake. I should have done all this. I love you. Please don't hate me. Why didn't you resist? How long did this last? Johnny, that wasn't fun at all. I was numb. Robert started crying, so I broke away, pushed Charlie, and locked myself in the bathroom. I've probably showered 10 times since then. It's a pity that our marriage was not a happy one. Maybe you could save it. I'm going to stay with my grandmother for a few days. Johnny, no, don't go. I need you. I want to be your wife. Please do not go. I love you. Her tears and pleas won't stop me. I wanted to punch the wall. Nothing in life was more terrible. At rugby training, I told my mates what was bothering me, lots of backslapping and attempts to cheer me up, but I was in pain. A few days later, while we were warming up before a game, one of the guys pulled me aside. John, Charlie fell, and where's this world coming to? He was kicked while he was lying down. I think a couple of guys kicked him about 100 times with steel-toed boots. He's in St. Rose. There may never be any little Charlies. You guys are the best. After the game, I went home. Marianne began to cry and beg. I'm really sorry I made a mistake. I love you. Please do not leave me. Please, I'm not ready to discuss. I took a shotgun shell, wrote Charlie on it, and put it in my pocket. I found Charlie's room in the hospital during the attack. He tried to protect his jewelry with both hands. His hands were no match for the steel toes of rugby boots. Both arms were in casts, and he also had a lot of tubes connected. When he saw me, his blood pressure began to rise, matching his growing fear. I showed him the shotgun shell. Charlie, I won't hurt you today. See your name on this shell? If I ever find out that you've even thought about Marianne, your mouth will be full of what's in that little thing. Am I making myself clear enough for you? Charlie nodded affirmatively several times. His blood pressure was alarming. When I left the room, I went to the pub to drown a few sorrows. Grandmother scolded me when I came to her. Johnny, open your heart. Give her a chance. Don't wait too long, please. I'll need a few more days, Grandma. I hugged her and went to bed. This morning, I found my grandmother at the kitchen table with a box of tissues. She took down a photograph of my father and stared at it. She doesn't seem to sleep at night. Are you okay, Grandma? Holidays are hard. Have you thought about what I said? Yes, I'm not ready yet. See you tonight, I repeated. Last night, I headed to the pub, listened to the lecture, and when I got to Grandma's house, I went to bed. I woke up on Christmas Eve to find Grandma in the kitchen again. She looked upset. The tissue box was empty and she was looking at a photo of my father. It seemed to me that she was muttering something, but I could not make out what it was. Good morning, Grandma. Is there anything in town today? It's my day off at noon, Johnny. Have you decided yet? Not yet. Open your heart, Johnny. It was a mistake, maybe a big one, but still an error. Do you need me to tell you about some big mistakes you've made? How is this different from you and that approachable girl at school? I just hope you don't wait too long. You are as stubborn as your father, Grandma. We are married now, this is completely different. At that time, Marianne was already wearing your wedding ring. I'll tell you what has changed. It is now you who have to deal with the sting of betrayal. When it was her feelings, it was no big deal, but now that it's your feelings, well, is it different? Don't wait too long, Johnny. She started crying again. I kissed her forehead and left. I found myself in a pub around dinner time. There's not much here, a few people come and go. I felt very depressed. God, how I miss Marianne and little Robert. I think I've already decided what to do. Another breath of pride, I washed it down with whiskey. I know alcohol is not the answer, but I was pretty sure milk and water were too. Hey, guy, he extended his hand, you look just like I feel. My name is Bobby. I've been watching you for a long time, may I join you? I looked up and saw a guy about my age, maybe a little younger, with empty eyes and an impassive look. There was a slight whiff of whiskey on his breath. Certainly, I didn't notice, shaking his hand. My name is John. Let me guess, like me, my wife cheated? I nodded. Do people live here, Johnny? Christmas should be spent with family. That's right. I'm John, but I never knew my mother. She died when I was a baby and my father died 4 years ago. What about you, Bobby? Well, if you are John, then I will be Robert. Both my parents are alive. I'm alive until I figure out raising a child. I found out about this a few months ago, you? Last week, my lady at the party cheated on me. Anyway, she felt guilty and broke down after a few days. At your place, my neighbor forced himself on her, but she didn't stop him that night. She couldn't stand it. Let me guess, I'm really sorry, it was a mistake, I love you, do not leave me. Yes, all of this. There's probably a script they all follow. I'm telling you, Johnny, I was cruel. I made her tell me everything down to the smallest detail. She was beside herself with grief. I didn't back down. He said that I would most likely get a divorce. I hear you. I haven't applied yet, but I'm going crazy thinking that I will. I should have calmed down, but I couldn't chew and swallow the last piece of pride. This is what hurts the most, I'm telling you, Johnny. Her eyes were full of tears. She worked here as a waitress and guys were constantly hitting on her. I still carry her photo. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. He knew exactly where the photograph was. She was wrinkled, but you could tell she was beautiful. The picture was taken a couple of years ago. He's still my favorite. You still haven't gotten along with her? No, I was too stubborn. She made a mistake, and I would forgive her. It's just too long. She wrote me a note and left. All I have to remember about her is our child. He opened his wallet again, rummaged through it, and pulled out a photograph of a woman holding a child. I can't believe she left you with the baby. We were all shocked. She loved him so much, it didn't make any sense. I can't bring myself to hold the boy. He reminds me of her. Robert, that's why you have to keep him, because he reminds you of her. He opened his wallet again, rummaged through it, and pulled out an envelope folded in half. He carefully unfolded it. On the cover was written in a woman's hand, Bobby. He carefully took out the letter and pushed it towards me. She wrote in a very elegant hand, Bobby, I'm so sorry. I will never forgive myself for this. I cannot live without you. With love, Eve. His eyes became misty, and so did mine. You could see how broken his heart was on his face. Do you ever talk to her? I've tried. Mom helps me with the child. Like you, he will never know his mother. The boy meant the world to her. Don't you think there's a chance for you to get back together? He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. He flashed it at me. It was a picture of a tombstone. Now she lives here. This was her suicide note. She went to her grave thinking that I didn't love her. I come here every day and drink a little whiskey for courage and then walk along the deserted path to talk to her before heading home. His voice didn't change. Life had already been drained from his soul. On the other hand, I have never felt worse. My stomach cramped, my eyes blurred with tears, and my heart had never felt such pain. He wiped his eyes and carefully put everything away. I felt so sorry for him. He is about my age and has to live with this for the rest of his life and raise his child. So you have to ask yourself, Johnny, would you rather hold your wife or look at her name etched in stone? I know which option I would choose. I just don't have a choice anymore. Merry Christmas, Johnny. Thanks for letting me bother you. He turned and headed towards the door. Merry Christmas to you too, Robert. Maybe we'll see you again. He didn't even look back. He simply raised his hand and waved. I tried to swallow the last sip of whiskey, but the lump in my throat prevented me. Tears streamed down my face. I called the waitress and started putting on my coat. She was young and I had not seen her before. Handing her a 20, I said, "Is that enough?" "Let me bring you some change, honey." "No, keep the change. Merry Christmas." "Oh, thank you, honey. Merry Christmas to you, too." She bent down and picked up something from the floor. "You must have dropped it." It was a photograph of a tombstone. "No, the guy I was talking to must have dropped it." "Honey, you're wrong. I've been here since 4 o'clock and there were only a few people here. You were alone all evening." "No, it was a guy my age. His name is Robert." She touched my cheek and looked into my eyes. "Be strong, Johnny. You can do it. It's time for you to go home." She moved the photo towards me. I looked at the photo and trembled. My head was spinning, my vision became blurry. I looked again to make sure. Evie PCK. Loving mother of John Samuel PCK. I laid my head on the table, everything was spinning. It cannot be true. I took a deep breath and stood up. I looked and instead of a photo in my hand, I saw a drink coaster. My 20 was lying on the table. I looked around and didn't see the waitress. I took my 20 to the bar. I tried to pay the waitress, she can keep the change. "Well, boy, I sent her home an hour ago. Let me bring you some change." Let the waitress keep it for herself. Merry Christmas. I was dizzy all evening. When I got to the car, I called home, but no one answered. I dialed Marianne's number, but no one answered. I don't remember much about the drive home, except chanting, "Please be okay, please be okay. My son will not be raised the way I was raised." I pulled into the driveway to find the house dark. I called Marianne's parents. "Hello, Mom, it's me, John. Is Marianne there?" "She's busy. She put Robert to bed. Can I ask her to call you tomorrow? I would really like to talk to her tonight." "She's busy today. She is with people who love her. Can you just leave her alone today, please? Tell her that everything is forgiven and I want her back. If she agrees, I'm home." The phone went silent. I walked into the house and went straight to the bedroom closet. I pulled out a shoebox with my dad's things. I sat down in the living room, opened the shoebox, and found his wallet. I carefully pulled out the 2 photographs and the letter he had shown me earlier. The photos had yellowed a little. I found the 3rd photo, all 3 of them. I was choking with sobs. I kissed the photographs. "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad." Another glance at my wallet and I was holding a photo of E's gravestone. I was shaking, trying to calm down. Marianne's parents lived 2 hours away. I didn't know if she would come home tonight or if she would come back at all. I was just a wreck. I counted the chimes from 1 to 11. When the 12th stroke sounded, I heard the front door open. Marianne put down the stroller. She cried, "Johnny, it's me." I raised my hand like a stop sign. "I know it was a mistake. I understand everything is over. We will never talk about this again. I have never loved anyone as much as I love you. I want you to come back if you will take me." She threw herself into my arms. "I love you, never again, I promise." We hugged and kissed for a long time. "What's this on the table?" "These are my father's things. I felt very lonely today. I'll clean everything up in the morning. Merry Christmas." "I have nothing for you, Merry Christmas. Having you back is the only thing I wanted. I am so sorry, I will never forgive myself for this. I cannot live without you." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I squeezed her tightly, my tears started flowing again. "Marianne, it took me a few days to realize this, but I would rather live with you than without you. The energy and passion we put into our lovemaking were incomparable to anything we had ever had. I don't think we fell asleep until 4 a.m. Robert's crying woke us up around 6 a.m. "Come on, get dressed. We need to get to Grandma's house." Grandma was sitting in the kitchen with a box of tissues. When she saw us, her eyes lit up like a 5-year-old child who saw gifts under the tree. She hugged Marianne and kissed her forehead several times. "Marianne, you didn't know what to think. Grandma really needed this. Johnny, you made my Christmas." "I'm sorry I made you cry, Grandma." Grandma buried her head in my chest and hugged me tightly. Later that morning, Marianne stood in the kitchen holding Robert in her arms and rocking as mothers do. Grandma took a photograph of my father. I helped her hang it back on the wall. "When did you stop calling Dad Bobby?" Her head turned sharply towards me. There was a strange expression of surprise mixed with shock on her face. "On the first Christmas Eve after Eve's death, he returned home and announced that he would be Robert and she would be Evelyn. Bobby and Evie were too painful for him. This was the strangest thing. He also pulled you out of the crib. Until this moment, he seemed afraid to hug you. You slept in his arms all night since that night. He hugged you every chance he got. Are you okay, Johnny? You look a little pale. I felt a cramp as I began to tremble. With a little strength, I'll be fine, Connie. Bobby would be so proud of you. It may not have meant much to me yesterday morning, but today it did. Marianne and I returned home at dusk. While she put Robert to bed, I began to put away my father's things. I looked at the photos again and began to shake as my tears fell. It was her. She was a waitress. Charlie disappeared. I don't chase Marianne around the kitchen anymore. Robert has a younger sister, Evelyn, in one of life's little oddities. She was born on the same day as her brother, 2 years apart. I paid for a new headstone. Robert Bobby PCK. Evelyn Evie Pickwick. Together forever, loving parents of John Samuel PCK. I tried to explain to Marianne what happened that evening, but she doesn't believe me. I warned you, Johnny, not to drink on an empty stomach. I can't explain it. I know that every time I find myself in a difficult situation, I touch my cheek where she touched me and think about her words. Be strong, Johnny, you can do this. Thank you for listening to this story. Now here is another exciting story for you to read. I should be at work, but instead I am inexplicably calm and sitting at the kitchen table drinking a cup of freshly brewed coffee. I needed this to calm down. I usually find this a very peaceful practice. I did this regularly when our kids were little. I would get up about an hour earlier than the rest of the household just to enjoy the quiet. I guess it was something of a passion of mine. I'm Evan Johnson, by the way, happily married for 25 years. More precisely, I was happy a couple of hours ago. We have 4 children, the last of whom left home last year. My wife was depressed by empty nest syndrome. I think that's what she called it. So I advised her to start a hobby. I think she did just that an hour ago. I didn't know his name. His name was Stallion, at least that's what she kept calling him. Do it, stud. Give it to me. It was strange that the aroma of their favorite coffee permeating the house did not interrupt them. Usually when I made coffee, my wife Audrey would run downstairs before it was even ready. Audrey was very busy anyway, so that might explain why she hadn't smelled the scent yet. Tell me how much better I am than your spineless weakling husband. Oh my God, you're so much better. My old Model 59 Smith & Wesson sit loaded on the red oak kitchen counter next to my mug. I wondered whether to put it on safety and decided to do so. I had to be careful, well, just in case, but after all, her boyfriend is a cop. How do I know this? Because when I got home early, his uniform and cummerbund were strewn across my living room floor, along with all of my wife's clothes, including her black lace crotchless Victoria's Secret panties. She bought them 2 months ago and showed them to me. I immediately started getting excited and told her to try them on, but she said, "Boy, these are only for special occasions." I expected these for our 25th wedding anniversary, which came and went without her wearing them. I wonder what could be more special than this. My birthday? No, that was 2 days ago. Now I know the sounds of the bed springs creaking and the headboard hitting the wall continually penetrated my brain. I had a hard time concentrating on what I had to do. I wasn't sure how much time I had, but judging by the noise coming from what used to be my bedroom, which, by the way, I would never enter again, I had plenty of time. I knew this wasn't the first time they were together because, among other things, I heard, "Damn it, baby, we need to find a way to increase our time together to 2 or 3 times a week instead of once in a while." This came from the lips of my loving wife, at least that's what I think she said. How did I end up here in the middle of this nightmare? It was really stupid. I went to work and forgot my briefcase. No, I actually left it in the garage because I put it there to get the cat out from under the hood of my car and forgot about the briefcase. Tabby was our second cat. One cold winter morning many years ago, I forgot to knock on the hood before starting the car, and that was the end of Clarence, our first cat. There is nothing like the sound a cat makes when it is wrapped in a fan belt spinning at about 1,000 revolutions per minute, not to mention all that fur flying around. Clarence wasn't smart enough, and apparently neither was I. My briefcase wasn't really that important, so I was just going to leave it. But I had to visit a client who drove me straight to the house. So anyway, I turned onto my street and immediately saw a black and white police car parked in front of the entrance. It felt like someone had stabbed me with a knife in my heart. I assumed that something terrible had happened to my devoted wife. I drove my 8-year-old Camry into the driveway, narrowly missing my wife's brand new silver Lexus LS sedan. Her plaster garden gnome wasn't so lucky. I didn't even close the door and ran into the house. That's ultimately how I ended up here, drinking coffee. Take me now, stallion. Do me good. God, I have never felt anything better. It was very unpleasant, and instead of coffee, I really wanted whiskey. But I decided that I still needed a clear head. I have to admit that their passionate cries were very disturbing, and seeing it was even worse. But I had to see it, if only to get the necessary video and audio. Honestly, seeing them having sex in my bed wasn't the most disturbing aspect. The most unpleasant thing was the verbal humiliation that my wife inflicted on me. God, you're so much better than Evan. Give it to me, baby. Give it all to me. I know I can handle it all this time. I know I can handle this. Oh, hell yeah. Apparently, this really turned on her lover because the whole house began to shake along with the bed, and his swearing and grumbling rose several decibels. Okay. Yeah, he actually had more than me. So excuse me. Damn it, if she wanted more, she shouldn't have. Married life, let me tell you, is a shock when your wife cheats with her lover in your marital bed. And yes, they have done it on my side. My wife, holding her breath, rode him cowgirl style and told her lover how much it turned her on. Part of me couldn't believe it even after I'd seen and heard enough to convince the jury of what was going on. But my wife was 50 years old, and the idiot she cheated on me with couldn't have been older than 30, and he was in really good shape. It's unlikely that my wife matched him. Sure, I wasn't a macho man either, but couldn't that at least go after someone's wife who was in shape? I don't understand. It seemed to go on forever, but after about 90 minutes, it became very quiet. They must have taken a break. Suddenly, I heard my wife ask, "Have you made coffee?" There was no response from her boyfriend. I just heard, "Oh my God," from Audrey, and then a lot of running around, the sound of closet doors, dresser drawers, and laundry baskets opening and closing. I assumed they were removing evidence of their date. I heard them coming down the stairs. They both appeared in the kitchen naked, wrapped in sheets. They saw me at that very moment. Audrey sucked in a sharp breath because I was there, and her lover did the same. I'm not sure if his shock was at seeing me or the Smith & Wesson Model 59. He glanced furtively in the direction of his uniform and immediately became desperate. "Hune's not there, stallion." "What? Your service weapon?" "Your boss took it with him when he left. Caring guy." He literally began to fade before my eyes, and then I saw his lips tremble in despair. He fell to his knees, losing the sheet in the process, and began frantically rummaging through the pile on the floor. "He took that too, I think. He called it your throwing weapon." I'm guessing what upset him the most was the fact that the serial number had been taken off him. Something like 5 to 7 years for this former officer. Stud Johnson's shoulders slumped at the revelation. "Like I said, he's a caring guy. We had a nice conversation while you two lovebirds were upstairs doing your thing." Stud quickly looked out the window onto the street. "Yes, he also took a patrol car. Your boss said that you provide safety on a construction site. He was going to take your uniform too, but he thought you might need it when you leave here." But where did I stop? Oh yeah. After Sergeant Mars got his video of you both and collected your weapons, he spotted my Smith & Wesson and asked me, "Is this your weapon?" "Yes, licensed." "Do you know how to shoot it?" "Yes." "Are you going to shoot one of them?" "You know we get angry if civilians shoot someone, even if they deserve it. One of the benefits of our job is that we can shoot people, but you can't." I promised Uncle Pat, Sergeant Mars, that unless the idiot has a third weapon that we don't know about, no one will get shot. Your boss said, "Okay," and headed for the door, saying, "Oh, do me a favor and tell Officer Johnson not to come to the station. We'll call him when we want to talk to him." I've never seen a policeman cry before. "It's time to take up your weapon. You don't have a third gun, do you?" He shook his head negatively. I knew it wasn't because we checked. I was just trying to make my point. I wasn't actually aiming at any of them. I just kind of waved at them and continued with my story. "Perhaps you could call your wife to give you a ride home." "Probably not. She was too upset about the video I emailed her of you. 2 in my bedroom." It was hard to understand what she was saying, but it was something about her father, the chief of police, and how could you do this to your children? She told me about them. "You seem to have a good family. Too bad, despite the current situation, I am really having fun now." It was a bit like the bait had caught a fish and I was just playing with it a little. "I would ask my wife to take you, but her car was confiscated." "What?" Audrey squealed. The police impounded your car, Audrey, because there were a couple of ounces of unaccounted weed in the front seat. Sergeant Mark said they usually just write a ticket if they do anything at all, but he feels like they owe me something for all the trouble the police department has caused me. Don't worry, he said. You can probably pick up the car in a few days after they do all their due diligence. Oh my God. Now she didn't scream anymore, it was more of a sad moan, sort of like a lonely little hound howling at the moon. Well, officer, I think it's time for you to put on your uniform and leave. He did just that. As soon as he left, my wife found her speech again. Please, Evan, I love you. It didn't mean anything at all. It was easy. Hobbies, something like that. Oh, girl, it's a pity that you didn't tell me about this earlier. I was worried that you loved him and were going to divorce me. Wow. Now I feel bad. I guess I really overreacted, didn't I? I mean, you love me and everything. Of course, I love you, Evan. Why do you doubt it? Until now, she seemed to be in a state of shock, but now she was definitely nervous and was paying close attention to me. Well, I'm really sorry, but when I thought you didn't love me anymore, I sent the video to our kids. I just wanted them to see who their new dad would be. You may have to wait a bit before calling them. For some reason, they seemed upset. I thought they'd be happy for you. Well, that shows you what I did. Oh my God. You didn't do it. I simply nodded my head. I forgot to mention one more thing, but you probably already know about it. Your lover's wife works in the same company as you. I think she mentioned that she works as an executive assistant to the CEO. Don't worry, I told her not to fire you because you'll still need your job even if they transfer you to Little Rock. When I talked to the lawyer, she said that since you earn more than me, you will pay me child support for several years. She thinks it will be somewhere around $3,000 a month. I know that most cheated husbands refuse to accept this, they are so macho. But this won't happen to me. I'm planning to take some time off from work and go on a long fishing vacation to deal with my pain. As the song goes, deep sea senorita fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't quite understand why the lawyer needed your photograph. She said it was to give it to her father. Maybe it was so she could pass it on to all the officers in case they wanted to start any harassment, or maybe it was to see if any of them still wanted to date you. But anyway, I gave her a photo that clearly shows your deep-throating skills. I also sent a copy of the video to your mom and dad and all your colleagues. How could you be so cruel to me, Evan? Oh dear, I wasn't cruel. I just wanted to let everyone know who your new beau is. All your Facebook friends seemed happy for you. At this point, Audrey barely reacted. She just sat on the floor in her sheet, sobbing, shaking her head, and muttering, "This can't happen to me." Okay, honey, it's time for you to get dressed and pack your bag. Your parents should be here to pick you up soon. I pushed her towards the stairs. So, you'll need a place to stay for the night. They told me that you could stay with them for a while. The house will have to be sold as part of the divorce. I said after her divorce, you seem to have a few questions, my dear. This surprises me. What do you think should happen when I find out? Well, I really didn't think you'd get caught. Are we going to continue this pointless conversation? It became quiet upstairs for a few minutes. She didn't make a sound except for the occasional wheeze and sob. Why do cheaters always cry when they get caught? This is the most terrible thing. If being caught is so unpleasant, then for God's sake, don't cheat. About 10 minutes later, she came downstairs, dressed but without a suitcase. Evan, honey, we really just... At that moment, I heard her parents' car drive up to her house. Goodbye, Audrey. As always, a gentleman, I held the door open for her. Dear viewers, thank you for staying with us and supporting our channel. See you again.